All right, all right, all right. Welcome to another open court discussion in the Counselor's Corner. I'm your host, David Lorenzo Glover, aka the Controversial Counselor. Also joining me is special guest Ron C. Washington.
Hi there.
Tonight, October 21st at 9 p.m., um, we are in the process of discussing the topic Paternity Puzzle, where we will delve into the complex and often sensitive world of paternity, surrogacy, and sperm donation. We will explore the emotional, legal, and social implications of these critical issues and examine why honesty and transparency are essential for all parties involved. Let's look at this scenario. I'm sorry I lied to you for so long and kept you around to be here for my baby. Unfortunately, it's not yours, and I'm not just saying this because I'm getting back with my ex, but because I just didn't know how to let you go. I'm sorry I made you be there throughout everything, my whole pregnancy, the birth, baby shower, etc. I hope you can just understand me. And if you want, you can remove me off of everything. Or if you want to see him, you can too. Oh boy, this is going to be an interesting, heartfelt conversation. Please like and share our video, and don't forget to tell a cousin to tell a cousin to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Controversial Counselor. We are still stuck at 919 subscribers, but trust me, a breakthrough is coming. You just wait and see. But in between time, everybody enjoy the show tonight. Feel free to request to come in and join the panel, and also participate in the chat. So here you have it. What's going on, Ron C. Washington?
The big bad wolf just wanted me to let you guys know that the weight loss is going pretty well. He said he's at 255.8 pounds and he's still trending downward, looking to get to 210.
Mm.
But in my world, man, everything is good. The big OG is doing all right. He's got no complaints, nothing to report other than some things that he found funny over the weekend, and we're not going to discuss that. Other than to say that homeless people do cook outdoors. So it was kind of weird. I was walking to the supermarket and I saw a dude on one side of the plaza, one side of the plaza, sitting there with a sign up, prospecting on some money. I really didn't think anything of it. But I got to the other side of the parking lot and there was another gentleman doing the same thing. Both of them were barefooted too, which struck me as kind of odd. Went to the store, came back, observed the same gentleman. He had a frying pan with a fire going, cooking something. I said, "No, wait a minute." So where the hell does something like that occur? And I said he might be homeless, but he's industrious, and he's gonna get him a hot meal.
So what was he cooking? You don't know?
I didn't stop to ask. I was kind of mad that I might have wanted some. But I saw the flame and everything. I was like, "Ah, he cooking with gas too." Shit, there's a lot of people who live in homes who got that disconnect notice who ain't got that gas. So just
That's crazy.
one of the things I see, man, in my travels on the daily. Yeah, I left it alone.
Yeah, I don't really have nothing. Nothing much. If something else come up later, I'll speak to it. But I don't, nothing resonating. It's the same old craziness at work. That's just who we are and what we have to deal with every day. So other than that, you know, sports world, Yankees in the World Series against the Dodgers. That's going to be very entertaining, and fun to watch. And basketball, I think starts. Do it start tomorrow? Maybe the NBA is the opening
I,
day
I
tomorrow.
think so.
Then football is about to get to that midway point, almost. So things is a lot of things going on in the sports world. I know you women probably like, who gives a fuck about that? But oh, and then we got election day about to roll around, so that's gonna be interesting. So it's a lot going on. Really, a lot is going on. And maybe I'm trying to downplay it, but it's definitely a lot going on.
Yeah, shout out to the New York Liberty for winning winning the WNBA championship and their fans. So, like you said, man, there's a lot going on. College football too. They're about the halfway point, nearing that, and this is going to be interesting going down the stretch to see how a lot of these teams shake out, especially with the expanded playoff. It's going to be a lot of chatter.
Yeah. So tonight's subject matter: paternity puzzle. Ron C. Washington, talk to me about this subject matter.
You know what? This I don't know if this necessarily hits home for me just because of the way I grew up. But when I saw the scenario that I sent you, then I saw another one regarding an adult male finally being told about his the situation regarding his birth, meaning that who he thought was his father wasn't his father. And I asked myself a couple things. What the hell does that look like? And number two, and probably more importantly, is what is the worst thing that a parent could do to a child? And I asked one person at work, and I was looking for a specific answer when I asked her, and she came up with some good answers, but I was looking for, either deceiving or lying about that child's paternity. Whether it be how the child was conceived, meaning if the child was conceived naturally, in vitro, a sperm donor, or an egg donor. Because when we talk about surrogacy, we tend to not really think about. I shouldn't say surrogacy. When we talk about um, people conceiving children, we tend to think about a woman going to a sperm bank. We rarely think about a father using the surrogate because it doesn't happen that often, and we rarely think about couples where one partner is infertile using the surrogate. So we look at the world today as is composed, and the world is interconnected. There's really nowhere to hide if you're online, unless you just situate your connections or your social media to where you rarely use it, or you only connect it to a handful of people. That's rare for most people. And then we talk about kids, and we're always focusing on mental health, especially with the younger generation. So as each generation comes to pass, more and more of them are going to be connected in this way. Now, for me personally, I think this needs to be a stepped approach for kids. Obviously, because they're not mentally equipped to deal with some of the rigors that adults are. And let's face it, as David has said before, a lot of adults aren't equipped to deal with the rigors of today's world. They're simply put, they're incapable of handling it. They're not emotionally fit, and them not being emotionally fit leads to a lot of other issues. But we'll get into that later. So, what happens when information of a child not being conceived in a natural way gets out, and somebody wants to bully him or her, and that person doesn't have a support group? It can be pretty daunting for that particular child, especially if they're one that suffers from low self esteem. They don't have a lot of friends, or they're being ostracized. So just imagine you come into a situation as a kid where you're in the middle of two siblings. One's older, one's younger. Your parents were told that they could not conceive another baby, that they wanted another child. So they went out and they found a friend that was willing to be a surrogate. You were born, or this child was born of a surrogate, and then they had a miracle child. Now, those two children, they in the household, they know, especially the older one. The older one tells the younger one, and all of a sudden now you got a pinball action going with the middle child. That child is probably going to be set up for all kinds of problems going forward, especially if the parents didn't sit them all down and say, "Hey, look, this is not this is not right. We're not going to tolerate this in this house. Whether this child was conceived of a different means, different way, this is a family, and we're all going to treat each other as family." We know for a fact that when holidays come around, some of the nastiness really comes out in a lot of families. Fights start, words are said, feelings are hurt, and people talking about, you know what? I'm never coming to another family gathering. And this happens. The reasons are many, the solutions few. So with that, I'm going to lay out the three particular things, but I do want to say this first though. Full disclosure. We're not here to demonize anyone or the decisions that they make. Reproduction is a life-changing event, and we don't want anyone to believe or feel that we're attacking people for the decisions they made or how they choose to reproduce. We are attempting to expose the consequences of that decision and how they can, after the child is born, reared, and reaches the age when the consequences become detrimental to the child, and possibly solutions can be implemented to prevent the long term negative impacts. Fertility or infertility is a rising problem in the U.S. and decreasing U.S. and the world. I'm sorry, in the decreasing world. This isn't a small problem, and it needs to be looked at. This is why we're attempting to do this, just so everybody know we're not picking on anyone. We're trying to bring light to a situation that probably is progressively going to get worse because um, testosterone rates are dropping, and this is across the board. So when we talk about infertility, like I said, we tend to look at women. We never really tend to look at men. So there's a lot of different reasons. And there's a podcast that I came across while I was writing the notes out for this, and it's termed the epidemic nobody sees coming: sexless men, population collapse, and the fertility crisis. The person who was speaking was Shauna Swan. The YouTube video is from May 16th, 2003, and it's on a channel called The Impact Theory with Tom Bailu. So if you want some deeper information into how all this stuff plays in, go check out that podcast. Now, number one, the hidden cause to fertility issues. I already mentioned bullied self-esteem and confidence, distrust in the parents. Just imagine if you get to be 18, 19, or 20, and your parents finally decide to tell you how you were conceived, if you were adopted, or any other number of myriad circumstances. Leads to self doubt, and you might suffer from loneliness, thinking, well, who am I? All those questions start to arise. Number two, you have physical issues now. You might have a congenital illness that you can't trace because one of these two isn't your biological parents, or neither one may be. Number three is a familial. These also can be looked at as mental issues as well. You can be displaced, wanting to know who your real family is, and you want to be able to locate them. There's a movie out, older movie, Antoine Fisher. and he goes through something very similar. So if you've never seen that movie, check that movie out. But those were the things that came to mind when I saw the scenario, and then I saw the other piece. So it was like, how do you deal with this as parents and as kids?
So one of the things when you talked about, I guess the deception, and you might look at ways that certain people do things. Like, for example, I don't know where I heard this story from or if I read it or something, but it was a guy said he was involved with a young lady, and he said he got his joint snipped. He had a vasectomy, whatever. So you know, and what they say, that's 99.9 or something percent accurate. So he engaged in fornication with the young lady, and I guess, and I ain't trying to gross y'all out, but I guess during that act it was like their first time, and but she ended up being on her period and didn't tell him. Uh,
Ooh.
so after the fact, I guess he said like, "Yo, whoa," like, and that was kind of their interaction. Like after that, he kind of fell back and like, "Yo, that was real," kind of like, let me know, kind of grimy that happened. And then months later, I guess they end up conversing, and she ended up saying she was pregnant by him, and he was like, I don't know if that's possible, and she was talking about this miracle baby, um, that maybe it happened with that 0.10%, and then he was like, kind of like, oh, but all this happened and you was on your period, like trying to figure out the time frame. But meanwhile, she had slept with someone else prior to that. But I guess the stranglehold or the mental warfare she was trying to play with this guy, whatever, was like, in his head, he was like, I don't know, like that's a slim chance. But she kept on pushing this miracle child thing. So I guess she kind of had him in a little bind, but just I guess it was just playing on his mind because I guess he's a decent guy and all that. If it was somebody else, they probably would have said, get the fuck out of here," and went about their business. But she kept trying to hold him hostage to that, and we know that sometimes that happens. That and it's always going back and forth. They're like, oh well, he should have used protection or whatever the case is, and oh, just because he had a vasectomy, that don't mean that he shouldn't. You know, he should protect himself. STDs or anything, which is true, but it's so many different factors that are involved that could have long term consequences. Or say, for example, in situations where the person is the father, but you as the mother, how it went down. That it wasn't like that, and you decide to say, okay, you have a child, and but he's somewhat distant from the child, and but you're holding him hostage for child support and financial reasons, and that plays a part in some of this too, as far as paternity, because of child support and responsibilities, insurance, and all that stuff. So people get jammed up in situations.
Lord knows, you guys all know the big bad wolf has been there. He was talking about that situation last year where there was the I think it's 24, I believe the child was, and he talked about his situation. So there's a lot of people out there thinking that, nah, this stuff don't happen, or it's rare. It's more prevalent than we like to believe. It's just not really talked about. and because it kind of invites some shame on behalf of the involved parties, especially if you have a situation like this where you have a woman that's been with multiple men and she's trying to find out who the father is, and she's kind of hushed about it because she don't want to be embarrassed. Who wants to be looked at as a promiscuous person, especially if you're a female? I'm the stigma is lessening slightly, but still, you have especially if he's a male. He grows up and he looks at you, and you got to think, what does he think about me? Not as a mother, because a woman can do an exemplary job in raising a child, but there's always the character issue that is floating around, especially if he had a situation like this. You probably ask yourself, well, what does he think of me as a woman? Does he think I'm worthy of some type of distinction other than being his mother? Does he think I'm worthy of speaking highly of? When I need something, is he gonna be there, or is he gonna be resentful? Is he gonna hold this against me because I don't know who his father is, and I didn't tell him, that there were some questions about his paternity, and the one guy attested who spent a lot of time with him isn't his father, but I didn't tell him, and a lot of this stuff eventually comes out in the wash, and only the future knows what's gonna happen. And the future doesn't give up secrets easily, so yeah, I would advise people, be careful what you're doing, and more importantly, be careful who you're doing it with, because you just don't know. And I'll say this from a male's perspective and a female's perspective. When conception happens and that child comes, people change. Ain't nothing the same. I don't care what anybody tells you. Married people change, and you have to. You're dealing with another life. You have somebody else that you're responsible for. You have somebody else that you're accountable for. You no longer get to live a carefree lifestyle if you care. Now, if you don't, I suppose it doesn't matter. But all the stuff comes in, and and then you talk about surrogacy. So if you're using a woman as a surrogate, you have to be concerned about her her well being. You know, how does she grow up? And granted, we know surrogate women. I believe they're just as well as sperm donors. Sperm donors, pardon me. They are heavily scrutinized. So I know sperm donors, they put through psychological tests and a lot of other battery of tests. But there's also the financial implication depending on state where that person could be held for child support. So what do you do if that person is like, hey, look, I was just trying to help somebody else, trying to be a good Samaritan, and now you greet me with this? This is what I got to deal with. So I mean, there's a lot, that can go into deciding to have a child, especially like I said earlier, if you're a couple and one of you is infertile, and that doesn't even include the financial ramifications. Go ahead, Dave.
Let me get in some far as reasons why adults may lie about paternity, surrogacy, and sperm donation. Here are some possible explanations. So, number one, fear of responsibility or commitment. Two, emotional unpreparedness for parenthood. Three, protecting a relationship or reputation. Four, financial concerns or insecurity. Five, shame or guilt related to infidelity. Six, uncertainty about paternity due to multiple partners. Seven, avoiding child support obligations. And eight, preserving family dynamics or secrets. So, and you look at all of those points, and you probably don't, if you don't, you probably don't think that deeply about it, but when you look at it, there's reasons why people do what they do. You might just not know the reasons.
Finances. I'll tackle that one first. Finances seem to play a. I will say this. an inordinate huge role. And I think more so than money. Granted, money's needed to take care of a home. I'm not discounting that. But aside from money, I think people aren't aware of the time commitment. And you always hear women say, it ain't about the money that a father spends with the child, especially when they're young. It's about the time. They always say time, 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 time. Because you can do a lot of things with money, a whole lot of things. But the one thing you can't do with money, you can't buy time. So, just imagine if a father's not present in a child's first 2 to 3 years of living for whatever reason, be it that it's misplaced paternity, he's denying paternity, or the mother gets pregnant, doesn't disclose that pregnancy to the person, whether it's a one night stand, a consensual relationship, or a relationship that only lasted a couple of months. Maybe her cycle's irregular, so she didn't think anything of it, and she can't find them. And this happened to one of my friends. I was just talking about it when we did the play. I won't mention his name because he's not here to talk about the situation. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, how the hell does that happen? And he said, man, she got pregnant. She didn't tell me. She up and moved away. And he said, you know, through a genealogy report that he saw, he had a leaf on his tree that he didn't recognize. So he eventually got around to messaging this person. They exchanged messages, and he found out who the mother was, and he got in contact with her. And she's like, "Well, I didn't know how to tell you. We had lost contact, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." So people, it happens. It happens, and I'm sure if you ask around and people were being forthright, you'd find out just how often this happens. So the financial component is a big thing, but like I said, that time, that time that people put in with their kids when they're younger, even though the kid may not have a recollection of it when they get older, that sets the foundation for a lot. Set the foundation for their mental health, sometimes their physical health, and a lot of times how they're going to deal with things in their future when they get to a point where they might want to have kids. They're gonna say, "Well, dad or mom, what was I like as a kid?" And how does that person answer if they weren't around? Now, how do you explain that to your child and they be okay with it? Just think about it. You sitting around one day and you ask your parents, "Hey, when did I first start walking? When did I stop nursing? Or when did I stop taking a bottle? Or did I ever suck my thumb? Or did I use pacifiers? Or when did I learn to tie my shoes? Or when did I take my first steps?" Just imagine as a parent, you can't answer any of those. Where does that leave that child?
Yeah, those milestones that some people may never have recollection of or don't understand. So when they go on to have children, they can't, connect the dots. Oh, shout out to Big Shank. What's up? What's up, family? Thanks for joining us. Um, One of the things when I was reading that scenario, and at the introduction, and the chick finally told the guy, and when she said, and I talked about that on the promo, and she said you can still see him if you want. Like, just imagine the devastation of that. Someone that you thought was your son the whole time, and it's not. And you know it's probably going to take that guy some time to come back around. if he does come back around, he may go into a shit like a Solomon, just isolate himself and don't want to talk to nobody because he's embarrassed. Don't want to come to family functions no more, because all people saw was him and that his
Mhm.
son. He was at the sporting events. His son was always rolling with him. He used to dress him up like him and make sure he had everything. And then all of a sudden, that was taken away. I can't even imagine how he would be. I mean, that's probably going to impact him in future relationships with women. So a lot of things could. And we always talk about this. You have to know what people went through or their past. Because we talk, what's the best predictor of the future is your past.
Mhm.
It, and I've spoken on this a lot of times, and people are like, I don't want to know about that. That has nothing to do um, on with me now. We're 50 something years old. Who cares what happens when you know when you were when they were 15, 16, or younger years and all of that stuff. You find a whole lot out by just listening or being around somebody's family, and you can see where things trickle down from. But if you're one who don't care about that, or it's not a factor to you, then you're gonna probably end up getting hit upside the head when you least suspect it over something because you never, as I said before, studied your opposition. Said that a couple weeks ago. Never understood or knew your personnel, so it's important. Like you don't know the dynamics of relationships or a child had with their parents, which is critical. Jedi said, "Good evening, good brothers. Thanks again for your commitment to knowledge and wisdom and sharing on this platform. Salute. Appreciate you, brother, for stopping through." So, just that whole thing, thinking about some woman telling you that, it's just it's wild. That that could lead somebody to alcoholism, drug abuse, like I said, isolation, messing up at the job, just angry and bitter from that point forward. Then he won't have nothing to give to that kid because looking at him, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going to be the same.
It if a person was looking for a way to alienate a man, destroy him, or to make him feel vengeful or just some type of way, line up our paternity is probably a surefire way to do it. And I could care less if he's a husband, he's a boyfriend, he's a one night stand. There's just some things that, you know, for the sake of humanity, should not be done. Because, like David said, what happens to the child? We talk about that man, and we know that if that man's going to have to make his way. There's just there's nothing else to said or it can be done. But that child becomes an innocent pawn in all of this. And then, if he or she survives that, they'll start to date and they'll have all manners of trust issues. And if that isn't resolved, like David said, who are they going to turn to? Trust my parents. I don't really want to sit and talk to a therapist about the fact that my my mother or father lied. So what do they do? They literally they are in a sea, a tumultuous sea, because the sea's internal for them, and they can't reconcile anything. They struggle to hold down employment. They can't make friends because it's so distrustful, and they feel like they are lost. They're alone. Nobody understands them except somebody else has been in their situation. And just imagine if they do have a child and they fall into a similar circumstance as they get pregnant from a one night stand or birth control fails, and the person says, "You know what? I want to have this child." And the father's like, "Oh, no, 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 no. This is not what I signed up for. I don't want to have this child." Person goes ahead, has a child, and that father is never around. That child grows up with the stigma of being a bastard, unwanted. The list is short, but it is very profound. And sometimes there really is no getting over that. Some people will tell you to get over some things. How do you get over not knowing really not knowing who you are, not knowing where you come from, and only knowing one half of you in terms of your lineage. Some people say it don't matter. You know what? You might be right for you, but what about the other person? What about the other person for them where family is everything because growing up, they didn't have a lot except family. And now they come to find out that the family that they thought was theirs isn't theirs. That'll shatter a lot of people. And if you're talking about, somebody that's 20, 21, and just getting out in the world, and all of a sudden they finding out that who they thought was their family isn't real. And just imagine if one of them has an axe to grind. I guess one of the kids that poked fun with him because that kid knew. So what happens when he meets that kid on the street and he gets at him or he gets at her? Now could potentially be looking at a criminal issue, and I don't think anybody wants that. But this is what happens when you have children that are maladjusted for that particular reason.
All right, let me read today's conversation. We are definitely expecting too much from parents in this current environment. It still takes a village to raise a child. Unfortunately, society has flipped the script, hence the chaos and confusion. Definitely a lot of chaos and confusion. And I think for me, I often say that I think we haven't adjusted to the new age.
Hmm.
We're still trying to do things the old way and not saying, wait a minute, we need to go back to the lab and figure these things out. It's no better demonstration in that in the education system that they keep trying to implement these old ways of doing things using old curriculums, and these kids is different. They don't move like we used to move. You damn sure got to pretty much entertain them, or you lost their interest. And so if you're not an entertaining teacher or anything, they're lost. They have nothing for you. But I don't know. No, nobody wants. It seems like nobody wants to tackle that issue, or I don't know. I think they just think they're gonna wave a magic wand, or it's just gonna disappear. No, this shit is only gonna get worse
Yeah.
year by year, year by year, year by year. And that's why some of the great ones, educators, after a while, they say, I'm out. I got to go. Got to go do something else. Got to be out because it's getting to be too much. And then, sometimes also that you let bring in have young leadership trying to run things, and they still wet behind. They have no fucking clue of what's going on. Ain't been around long enough, so and I think all that plays a factor. So the parenting piece and all that stuff, you got to make we got to make adjustments. Let me read the rest of what he said. Um, Many members of the extended family use to teach children different things, not just biological parents. Now we expect the father and mother to teach the kids what many people used to do. No way. And that is true. There's always pillars in the community that you can get certain things from, a certain information, or you kind of kids kind of knew what a person stood for. I mean, when you stepped out in your neighborhood back in the days, you knew who was about this,
Hmm.
what parent was about that. It was always a parent that was in the sports. Like, okay, let's go to the court. I'm gonna load up the van. We're gonna go out here and do this. Then you had some that was, handy with their uh, fixing on cars. And if they can engage you and call you over, you would get a little work in like that. Okay, go give me this wrench. And they'll explain what they were doing. It's not the same. It's not the same anymore. And we talk about this often too because we're in a transient. We most of us live in transient communities that people are not there
Yeah.
too long, and plus, of course, with social media and communication, we're not talking or communicating, and half of the time, people don't know who their neighbors are or what they're about, where they work at. Those conversations are kind of non-existent. So this is what we have to add on to the whole paternity and nuclear family type of stuff dynamics.
Yep. I was just having a conversation with somebody, and we were discussing, the lack of male earners to fill out a family. So the definition now of a family is women and children. So when you have just women and children, you're creating an environment to where men are essentially not around. Not that they're not needed, they're not around. So as David said, when we grew up, there was always somebody in the neighborhood or around, whether it was an uncle, older brother, who would be able to teach you certain things. So you could go to, or they will pull you along and say, hey, look, we're going to do this. Why am I coming? Because this is something you need to know. Sometimes we didn't have a choice. Now, these kids have all the choice in the world to learn and do nothing. Now, that's not necessarily their fault because the parents are enabling them. And this is something I saw my man in Target, and we were talking about this. He said these kids will never know what it was like to be kids in our generation. And it's absolutely true. There were some things about our generation that were just absolutely incredible. I mean, we grew up with just look at the television. The shows we grew up with, Archie Bunker, Jefferson's, Dukes of Hazzard, um, the list is endless. The music, none of that exists nowadays. The music and television shows taught us lessons. A lot of people didn't like Family Matters, but I look back on Family Matters now as an adult and I say, you know what? The topics that they covered in the way that they covered them, no other show did. And same thing with Good Times. I mean, we 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 usually talk about the Jeffersons and Najee Bunker in terms of all the interracial or the racial undertones of the show. But that was the culture back then. And it wasn't necessarily good or bad. It taught us how to deal with certain people who had a certain mindset. It also taught us about interracial couples and interracial dating because then it was a topic. We were just coming out of the 1960s where segregation was a, a, a decade ago. I'm sorry, a generation ago. It was the way. So, what happened to the kids of interracial relationships where If the daughter got pregnant by a black guy, oh, she was gone. She was sent to nowhere. Nobody would find her. For those who are fans of the movie Life, you'll know this part. I'm the daddy. No, I'll be the daddy of that dead child. That was a real thing. So if you have a child born of that generation and they have grandchildren of this generation, they almost won't relate. And then we talk about, as Jediah said, that the village concept. The village concept kind of gets lost in the shuffle of generations. They say, well, this ain't your time, grandma. Things are different. Well, how different are they? You know, kids still need structure. They still need guidance. They still need somebody to say, hey, look, sit your little hot ass down before you end up getting in a situation that you don't want to be in. Because these kids, they think they know more than what they do. Like they used to tell us, oh, you grown? You go, well, why don't you move your grown ass out? And then you realize that at the moment, you ain't that grown. Because you ain't earning that kind of money. You say, okay, you know what? Maybe I need to sit my fast ass down and listen a little bit. And, and it never hurts to take your time and walk through the garden and smell the roses. Everybody want to run through there, run through there, run through there. Well, take your time. Life ain't going nowhere. It's the longest thing that you gonna do, without a doubt. So just sit back and relax and let things come to you. You don't gotta force it. Even if you find yourself in a situation like this, and I'm saying this to an adult who who might find themselves in a situation. It's not enviable. It really isn't. But the worst thing you could do is not find others who are walking that same path. Because trust me, you're not alone. There's a lot of people out here who want to know who their parents are. And I'll recommend a movie to you. Like I said, Antoine Fisher. He went through phone books, and I'm not sure how much of the movie is accurate, but his girlfriend, God bless her, she stood by him. She was his rock. And even though she didn't accompany him to when he got to confront his mother, she was there after it happened. And for those of you who have never seen the movie, I won't give you the spoiler because um I think it's um I think it's very apropos to what he does with the lead, and the lead is Denzel Washington. So I can tell that to you. I think it's very apropos that what happens with Denzel just kind of um brings it all together, in terms of what a situation like that can do and what it can yield and what it can yield. So, we there's so many different dynamics at play, whether you're talking about kid going into adulthood or an adulthood, an adult trying to find themselves and where they belong in the world, but they don't know where they came from. I mean, I venture to say there's probably no worse feeling as an adult than being lost. Most people expect adults, especially once they reach a certain age, they expect you to have all the answers. And if not, they expect you to go find the answers. But what happens when one question leads to another, leads to more? Because we all want to know when something happens, like with kids. Well, why? Well, why didn't you tell me that my mother was this? Well, why didn't you tell me that, you know, um, I survived birth, but my mother died and you remarried, and this lady who I call mom isn't my mother? That explains why her and I don't get along so well. Or why I have a different last name than her. I mean, There's a lot behind this.
And one of the things to go back to one of your previous points is I always tell kids, in most cases, if you live a productive life, you're an adult longer than you are a kid.
Hmm.
Uh, so enjoy, relish your childhood. Life is short. Life is fast. Uh, Before you know it, because y'all know I work at the middle school level. You're in the sixth grade one year. Next thing you know, you're in the 10th or 11th grade. And that time span goes by so fast. And after a while, all you have is memories. Some people can't recollect, don't have memories because they can't remember anything.
Yeah.
I still remember things from high school, outfits I wore at a certain time without having pictures, just knowing like stuff just playing in your head. And you hold on to those memories and you share those memories and you tell stories about them. But, these kids in this age, I don't know. They're chasing that silver bullet, thinking, "Oh, I can't wait to turn this age. I can't wait to get 18 so I can go." And again, we've talked about this too at a maximum. Where the fuck are you going
Mm.
at 18? Unless it's somebody's college dorm or where are you going? Where are you going? You really don't have. And that's why I always tell kids, you better be careful how you speak to certain individuals. You better start being more respectful, and you better because many you don't have a plan. You don't have no gold at the end of the rainbow that you're gonna get to. That was that whole message put out back in the days. Oh, when you turn 18, you grown
Hmm.
was a lie, a big ass lie, a big ass myth, and you're not grown. You're still a big kid, oversized kid, and you still gonna need direction, and you're gonna need reinsurance, and you don't have all the answers. We didn't have all the answers. Shit, we still trying to figure out some of the answers.
Hmm.
But sometimes that's when you have to eat a little humble pie and say, consider the source who's talking to you. Now, if
Yeah.
you got somebody talking to you and they drunk as hell and they smelling like freaking Thunderbird or some winery or whatever, or smelling like mad ass weed all the time and all that, you may say, "Oh, yeah, I've studied you. I watched you. You've been doing it. You've been the same way for years. Like I'm gonna listen, but I'm gonna be leery of your advice. But when you have people that's on the up and up and trying to do things, you might want to take time to listen and see what they got to offer because like I said, like we said, it's not gonna get easier out here. It's just gonna get harder. And then some of you are gonna lose the fact that your parents are aging and
Hmm.
they may not be around. They're not gonna always be around forever. And sometimes all you have is your close family. You don't have no extensions to go on. Everybody act funny acting.
Hmm.
So once everybody from your close immediate family, if they start passing, where do you turn to? It's just stuff to think about, people. Not trying to dampen y'all spirits, but it's just it's real. As real as it gets.
Yeah. I just want to drop these numbers on people. The cost for an in vitro treatment, this is per cycle, is anywhere from 12,400 up to $30,000, and that includes all the associated costs. According to USA Facts, in 2021, There were 97,128 kids born to what is called ART, which stands for Assisted Reproductive Technologies. Surrogacy, not surrogacy. I want to say, well, actually, surrogacy probably would be considered one of the, but definitely in vitro fertilization, whether it's female infertility or male infertility, the results in terms of conception are the same. That the child is not conceived naturally, so that method is used. Adoptions is another one that we don't really discuss a whole lot. And in 2021, there were 5,018 adoptions out of 27,952. That 5,000 was family adoptions. The other 22,000 or so are adoptions out of family. Now, some people will say, well, that's not a bad thing. Au contraire, mon frere. What happens when you have a child who is adopted outside of their ethnicity? What happens when you have a child that is adopted outside of their culture? What happens when you have a child that is adopted from a different country? All those things are going to weigh heavy on that child. And because that child will lack the vocabulary to be able to articulate themselves to what they're feeling, it could be misread in a number of ways. And those are also, excuse me, some of the things that's really spoken about. We heard about it, when there's celebrities that do it, but we don't hear about it when there's people that are well to do it. So how does that child cope? Are there services for that child? Probably not. Why? Nobody ever thinks about it. Nobody ever says, well, what do we do if there's an Asian kid adopted by a black family? Or what do we do if there's a black child adopted by an Asian family, or any number of combinations? What do we do? Because more than likely what you see is Asian children brought over here by Caucasian families. And people will say, oh, that's great. They're giving them a good life. They're getting a life better than what they got if they were back in their home country. That might very well be true. They might be getting a lot of things that their biological family couldn't offer. But there's one thing that their biological family can offer that that family can't offer, and that's an authentic family. Mm-mm. Yeah, I'm gonna read this by Jedi. He says, "My brother just informed me that his daughter, my niece, is exploring freezing her eggs. She's 35, never married, currently married to a job." And this is what we're talking about. This sets up the potential of her using the sperm bank and this child never, ever knowing who their father is. And while and like I said at the top of the show, I'm not here to demonize anybody's decision on how they reproduce. I just want people to understand the ramifications, the long term ramifications that these decisions have, because they're not talked about. The mainstream media, they don't cover this stuff. Why? Because they don't want to be perceived as telling women, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. Why? My body, my choice. We're moving into a time in humanity where if a woman wants something she can afford it, she's supposed to have the right to go do it. Nobody's going to tell her no. Why? It's not fair. She's earned it. Do we think of fear so much that the well-being of the child never comes into question. I mean, because that honestly, that's the fair part. We need to consider how this entity that has absolutely no bearing on whether it's created or not is going to have a fair childhood, is going to be raised fairly, is going to be treated equitably by its peers. And if there's a no, then we need to start slowing down the process. We need to start asking those hard hitting questions with people who are single people. I won't say couples because couples are in a different situation, but with people who just want to do something because they can afford to do it, because they think they have a right to do it. You don't have a right to destroy somebody's life. You absolutely don't. This is why when people commit crimes that delete other people, they're tried for it. They're arrested. They're taken out of society. They're saying the society has deemed them as not worthy of being with the rest of us. And very few people raise an eyebrow. But when something like this comes along, we say, hey, look, you got the right to destroy somebody's life because it makes you happy. It fulfills a biological need, fulfills a biological urge. Yes, you can afford it. We'll help you do it. We don't care. We'll deal with the repercussions later, if we deal with them at all.
So, which makes me look at some of these points, far as surrogacy and also sperm donation. Um, and for surrogacy, they says the number one, I guess, issue as far as that is stigma or societal pressures surrounding surrogacy. Two, fear of judgment from family, friends, or community. Uh, you know, despite it all, no one wants to hear criticism or whatever if you're a guy that you can't put out and produce and have a have a child. And the same thing far as with the woman. uh because people would always throw out the natural way of doing things, or why are you still with this person. And you can find someone that y'all have your own blood, your own DNA, and all of that stuff, like a natural birth. And, that plays on people. So that's one of the things. What else? Concerns about confidentiality or anonymity, emotional complexity surrounding reproductive choices, protecting the surrogate's identity or relationship, because sometimes it could be, shit, it might be that's the sister of the woman or somebody uh, to that effect that, you know, you don't want that information leaked or put out there. Uncertainty about legal or medical implications,
Mm-hmm.
and fear of being ostracized or marginalized. And that's for surrogacy. Let's look at sperm donation, anonymity or confidentiality concerns, fear of future contacts or responsibilities, stigma surrounding sperm donations, and uncertainty about genetic implications, concerns about family or social reactions, protecting personal or professional reputation, and emotional complexity surrounding reproductive choices. So, so many layers, so many factors. Yeah, I probably ain't never looked at it like that. Like, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, and the anonymity, especially around sperm donors, that's huge. We talked about a short time ago the lack of black men who are donating. So what does that do for black women who desire to have a black child, but they don't want to get married? They don't want to do it the traditional way. So now they have to go find something or someone, if you will, that's compatible in certain ways. And one of those ways we already know is not going to be ethnic wise. So what does She tell that child when that child grows up, and they don't share similar pardon me, share similar physical characteristics. What did Ricky always tell Lucy? Lucy, you got some explaining to do. Mom's not gonna have them answers that is gonna sit too well with that child. And there's no amount of village that's gonna help mother because mother made the decision more than likely without consulting the village. Because what do you think the village would have told her? You think the village would have told her to go ahead and pony up almost upwards of $30,000? That's if she's successful the first time. The village might say, "Hey, look, you going around there, get you one of them little deadbeat pookies or them guys who ain't doing that. At least the child's gonna look like you." She's probably gonna say, "Nah, I don't want to deal with that. I want to deal with something that's better. I want to deal with something at least that I know my child's gonna be intelligent. It's gonna be smart because they grade out the sperm and the sperm donor on this criteria." It's like I said at the top of the show, we're not here to demonize anybody's decision on how they reproduce. We just say, hey, look at the long term ramifications of the decision making. Because at a certain point in time, it's gonna hit the fan. And how it comes back is going to determine, was the decision worth it? For some, it will be. For many, it probably won't be, especially if they're dealing with different dynamics in terms of the ethnicity. It's it's not an easy decision. It's one that's wrought with a lot of peril, uh, without the right support, especially for whether it be male or female. I don't know if one gender is going to require more than the other. I believe each gender is going to be settled with their own respective issues. I don't necessarily believe one gender is going to be um, better equipped emotionally or physically to deal with the questions that are going to come out. Now, one might be more comfortable because one's not making necessarily an emotional decision. One's making more of a calculated decision where they're saying, "Hey, look, at a certain point in time, I need to sit this child down and explain to this child what I did," because essentially that's how it comes out, is what I did and why I did it. Hopefully, at that age, that child is adjusted enough to where they can kind of understand. They may not have the full grasp that an adult would, but at least they're setting them up to succeed and not to fail. And that's the big difference. Is we always want to set the generation coming up behind us so they can do better than we're doing. But some parents don't do that. Some parents sabotage their children. Like I talk about with the bonnet in this situation. Some parents say, "Hey, look, I'm okay. My kids are gonna be okay." Well, not if they walking into an environment that is chaotic, dysfunctional, and it's not conducive to them learning. So they step out to the world already at a disadvantage because they're coming from a home that they don't know if it's really theirs. Told them so many things now in terms of who their mother was or who their father was, but because they're not around, they can't really speak to them. So now they go to school, they start acting up. Teacher and administrative staff, they don't know why. They send the child to the school psychologist, and the child is in the eighth, ninth grade, and they disclose to the counselor they just found out that they were adopted. I say, well, damn, what do we do? Do we provide services for this kid because the kid still needs to be educated? Do we bring the parent in so the parent can also understand what's going on, the dynamic? What do you do?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of unknown answers, and a lot of times it's we just did rapid fire. Let me read Jedi's comment. He said, "I hate to admit
Oh,
to now being indifferent to a lot of these societal issues. What can we do to affect the bad choices of free people in a secular and liberal society? Not much, in my considered opinion."
I said, oh boy.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, we all talk. We all want something to be a certain way, but we only can control so many things. We only can control what we can control, and a lot of it we don't have no control of. And I think that's where the frustration comes in, because you be wanting certain things to be right, and sometimes all it takes is a little something to throw it off, and you can't never get it right. And it's a part of your day to day activity or your existence, and you have no control over that. So, what can we do? It's a lot of things that start off well and we mean well, but don't always last. So, and I think about like different programs. So, do we have the right people in place, the personnel to see the process through, or we live in a society where a lot of things is short term, and it's kind of like, what have you done for me lately? Like, if I don't see the reward, I'm not going to put out any effort. So it's a tall task to deal with. And if you come on any of these podcasts like you got all the answers, then you just JBT and just be talking. You just talking, because it's a lot of things that gonna remain unanswered. Like, as far as what can we do next? Because soon as you try to move and do something, and you think you got a hold of something, it's always something that's gonna pull that apart. Then you just got to go back and try to start over again. It's definitely frustrating, but this particular topic, it's a lot. It's a lot of impacts. Uh, impacts a lot. Mental health wise, trust, behavioral. Not even talking about the health wise of not knowing who you are, who's your real biological people. Because if something really happened,
Yeah.
you may not have no idea who could come rescue you or whatever. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is the consequences of lying about you know these situations. And number one, emotional distress and guilt, damaged relationships and trust. Yeah, you've been through a lot. You've been in a lot of every relationship you've been in, and it was damaged. You can believe, if you haven't done any work, you can believe that next relationship is going to be damaged. Uh, Unintended consequences for children's well-being, legal complications or disputes. Five, psychological impact on all parties involved.
Hmm.
Six, perpetuating harmful secrets and stigma. Seven, undermining integrity and authenticity. Why honesty matters. I mean, not that didn't go with that, but understanding integrity and authenticity. So, as you can see, a lot. a lot to think about. But we don't move like that. We like a microwave society. We want stuff to happen right then and there. We make hasty decisions, and you don't think about how does this impact others. We just do what feels good at the time, or people please, uh, to be a part of an in crowd, that we don't think about all the other dynamics that play in this.
And I'm still looking at Jedi's statement, and I'm trying to come to grips with the question he's asking. And unfortunately, really, there isn't there just isn't really an answer. I mean, because the society we have and the freedoms and the rights we do, essentially, an individual has a legal right, and I hate to put it like this, but just to set somebody up in a bad way. Now, where in human existence does such a thing occur? Even as much as philosophers debate on certain things, morality, I think all of them would agree that nobody should have a right to set someone up for failure. I mean, that's probably the worst thing that a parent could do to a child. And that's what happens when you get parents out here who are making these decisions that are based on emotion as opposed to rational thought. Like I said, I'm not here, we're not here to demonize the decision making. Just, and I'll reiterate it, we want people to understand the long term impact and ramifications, because like David just said, if you don't know who you are, and part of knowing who you are is knowing who your parents are, then you are never, and I do mean you are never, I don't care who you are, you're never going to be able to go forth and go forward and do what you're capable of, because you're always going to be thinking about what it wasn't. When David talked about, having childhood memories, even though I was in foster care for a lot of my youth, I still recall most of the people I stayed with. I still recall some of the good times I had. I still recall when my mother was alive coming to see us. That let me know that despite what happened, we were not abandoned. But what happens when a child doesn't have that? Because by you know, all circumstances, I'm a well-adjusted person, despite having been through that. But I could not imagine not having any familiar support, never having a visit from my mother or anything of that nature, just being placed in a home here, being placed in a home here. Nobody cares. Nobody said anything. Nobody had a kind word. Nothing. I don't think I'd have made it this far. Certainly not in the condition that I am. I'd have been under committed a couple crimes, probably some major ones, screwed up in the head, and hell, who's to say that I wouldn't end up getting some female pregnant and continuing the cycle? Because that's all I know. So now I'm an emotional wreck. I'm out here uh, creating families that are dysfunctional and emotional wrecks. And I'm saying, okay, well, I made it. They'll make it too. I don't care. That probably one of the that's probably one of the most rootless existence that a person can have, especially a man, because society looks to men for so much in terms of direction and leadership and building, that if you get a man that's out here and he's wayward and he's reasonably attractive, women kind of fawn over him and flock to him. Oh hell, he can do so much damage.
Mm. Whew. Let me look at this last part. We talk about the consequences of lying. Then this is another part. Why does honesty matters? It promotes trust and respect in relationships, fosters emotional healing and closure, ensures children well-being and stability, encourage responsible reproductive choices, break down stigmas and promotes understanding, and six, supports personal growth and integrity, and seven, cultivates a culture of honesty and transparency. Remember that every individual circumstances are unique,
Hmm.
and the reason for lying can be complex and multifaceted. Would you like to discuss the topic further, explore related resources? So, as you can see, again, a lot of different reasons. Sometimes we just sit around and talk and just take the little surface level reasons without going any further. Uh, but just some of the talking points that was expressed with you tonight, you should know, like man, it's a lot to think about. Just a lot to do. Like it's so much work to be put in, and typically we're only scratching the surface on these subject matters. But we do know that we're hitting home with some people that, as we speak, they're probably trying to navigate or going through one of the issues that we've addressed. And you only can hope that, I guess the ultimate goal is for people to try to build the team. You got to build the team with support. You got to build the team. And with that being said, you got to work on communication, uh, consistency, and just staying with it. Like when you decide to jump into something and you're trying to build something, it has to be consistent. It can't be, oh, every couple days or whatever the case is. You got to put in the work, because other than that, we gonna be you gonna be cooked in most situations. And these are not easy situations, because as you get older, you always have doubt or have questions and wonder why you behave the way you are. And and it doesn't, when you go back and you look at history, then you'll figure out some things. And trust me, I just had, like in August, when I went down to South Columbia, South Carolina, we had a little. I don't want to minimize it because we already talked about little, but it's just something that we just can't can't escape our conversation. We had uh like a reunion weekend, but not full blown, but just, you know, weekend festivities. And shout out to my cousin Cinda, who put stuff together and talked about like our family history and paternity and different things. And the things that I learned just blew my mind when they was talking about my great grandmother, her children, or her brothers and her sisters, and how some people went to Chicago, how some people went to Niagara Falls. Listen, if you haven't had one of those sessions, you ain't trying to know what's going on or try to understand why you are who you are.
Yeah.
Even that short time, I was like, damn, it all makes sense. It all makes sense why some of us behave the way we behave, and do the things that we do, it, it was just mind blowing because you don't understand. And not to put too much information out there, but when one of the key points that she had mentioned is my great grandmother, how she had children, but they all, and she had them, she was young. And apparently they probably was had children by with an older person, older guy. And but her, like my grandmother, them, they all migrated. Her children went different places, different cities. And but at the end of the day, I guess the family love kept everybody still connected, and we're still like a close knit family, but it don't always end that way because somebody could go to this city, then another child can go to that city, and you just grow apart. So sometimes when you look at all that, you like, wow. So it kind of blew my mind when I just sat back and reflected, like yo, that had to be tough. That had to be hard, like the struggle. But in this day and age, we're in a better position. But imagine the things that go through people's mind. So when I was learning some of that history, I was just like, wow, it was a lot. It was a lot. I'm gonna leave it at that. Jedi said, indeed, do people really want to know how the sausage was made? Be very careful about what you want to know.
And what you said and what Jedi just said brings up a situation. Terrell Owens found out he was dating his cousin. Why? Because people weren't honest with him from day one. So just imagine how that has to put a damper, or that put a damper on him at that particular age. When you find out you're dating your cousin, you probably, as a kid, you as a young male, you say, well, wait a minute, why the hell wasn't I told that this, and how to, you you got more questions than you can ever get answers. And guess what? When you get that answer, you're probably not going to believe it any damn way. Why? Because you've been lied and deceived for so long that you're not going to know which way is up, which way is down, how to get out. And if you get out, are you really out? Are you really where you think you are, where what you do is not going to come back on you? It's not going, you're not going to wake up and somebody's going to tell you something crazy? Because then we ask, well, people will ask, well, damn, why was he such a malcontent everywhere he went? Nobody ever stops to think about how he grew up. Nobody ever asks, well, why did he grow up the way he did? Nobody stops to think about, why didn't someone intervene? Because trust me, somebody knew. Like BGS always says, the family secrets ain't as secret as long as you, or like you think they are. Somebody knows this. Nobody's speaking. Why? Because we want to protect people's feelings. We want to protect somebody's right to do what it is. Like I said, nobody has a right to destroy somebody's life. But in this country, I guess you do. And it's unfortunate that the people who bear the brunt of those decisions made had nothing to do with the decision making process. And that is cruel and unusual punishment, something the Constitution strictly forbids. But here we are allowing people to engage in it.
Yeah, when I go back and think about like some of the themes, and you said he was dating his cousin. Yeah, that happens a lot. And they used to like kissing cousins and talk about that. It's a lot of people related that we we don't know. I mean, because of the way things went with our ancestors and stuff like that, that it was a lot of mixing of families and close relationships and uncles having kids by nieces and things of that nature. uh, then you migrate to different cities and you realize, oh, you know that your family is related to this family because of this person. Like, man, you just never know. You don't know who you connected with or whatever the situation unless you kind of get into that. Some people like, oh, I don't care to hear about it, but if you took the time to listen, you and one of the things, I didn't go as deep, but when I was getting my master's in counseling education, I had to do a genogram where I had to, uh, you know, I interviewed my grandmother to get some background information on the family and different things. And, it was eye opening. Jedi said sometimes ignorance is bliss. Some people just don't want their peace disturbed by the strange fruits on the family tree. Uh, yeah, yeah, and that's true. But then sometimes those people are wondering why such things are happening because they never got to the root cause of situations. Carla West Ferguson, how you doing? Thanks for joining us here in the Counselors Corner. So it's a lot, and we're kind of going all over the place. But when you think about it, it's a deep issue that's been an issue for a long time. This paternity, surrogacy, sperm donors, and all that stuff. That it's probably a lot of baggage that's somewhere in the attic, somewhere just stored away.
It's funny you mentioned that because it was something that I had thought about in passing, but it wasn't anything I really looked at. And I know there is history that supports um what you were saying in terms of slaves from different plantations unwittingly mating with blood relatives. It happened. The royal family almost destroyed itself because they wanted to keep everything cloistered, and they end up spreading congenital diseases because they were intermixing with their family members. So that's definitely something I'm going to look into because I was like, you know what? I wonder what the prevalence of that was. Because simply put, nobody would have known that this person was sold when they were 4 or 5, and they come back around and they get together and they have kids. All of a sudden, now you got some weird birth defects that should never occur. And all of a sudden, you go back and you say, "Hey, well, wait a minute. This individual was sold to this individual, and trust me, they know. They can go back through certain records, certain historical documents, and they know who was sold to who.
Mhm.
Now, can they track them? Don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say what they could have tracked and what they did or anything of that nature. I do know that bills of sales were kept and who was moved to where. And they can identify them physically by whatever means, but it's something I'm going to look into. I might have to reach out to a few people and see the odds and the possibilities are of intermixing, with families, because we talked about this, but like David said, this has a far-reaching a far-reaching consequence that when we sit down and talk about it, people are gonna start scratching their heads and they're gonna say, "Hey, you know what?" Like Jedi said, "Do I really want to know how the sausage is made? Do I really want to know if my parents got together and their great grandparents, or I'm sorry, my parents are a result of my great grandparents actually being blood relatives?" That, you talk about a good way to ruin a person's day. they they're not gonna be looking at things the same for quite a while. And what happens if they're older? How, they live their life this long. How do they reconcile coming into some information like that? All of a sudden, now everything that they thought they knew, they started to question. And this is one of the things we talked about. We talked about earlier that, hey, look, the worst thing a parent can do is lie about paternity or anything of that nature. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of people out here dealing with a lot of stuff. Which is why I always say, give grace. I expect grace, so I give it. And yeah, now there are certain times where somebody do some dumb shit, and I'm just like, you know what, you're not worthy of grace. Get the fuck out of my face. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, Ron usually don't get down like that. Ron is usually a cheerful person, but yeah, even Ron has his level. He gets fed up when he's just like, "Yo, leave me alone."
But for me, I guess when you go deeper and you have these conversations, you find out definitely, damn, why the way you are the way you are. Uh, because it probably was that uncle or someone that was similar, and you say, damn, you listen and you say, damn, that's me. That's me.
Yeah.
That's me. And you connect all the dots. And then don't let them pull out pictures and you look and you're like, oh shit. Like, like, damn, we look alike, or this person look alike. Like you look just like that, this person, and you more intrigued because I always tell you, images are powerful.
Mhm.
So if you have someone who collects this stuff, and again, shout out to my cousin Cinda, who loves to have pull up pictures and post them, and you look and you like who is that? And you realize the similarities because, but a lot of times people don't because they don't. People don't want to know their history or did I say? Do people really want to be dampered or because a lot of times people associate that with like sad times, but it's really a time that makes you stronger when you have the ability to know who you are and know why you behave the way that you behave and you have an understanding because many people they don't have understanding, they don't know what anybody went through, uh, but they crazy as hell. More than likely, you crazy as hell. There was somebody probably down the line crazy as hell too. Like people have suicidal genes in their family that suicide runs in the family, and scary. It's crazy, but it happens.
Oh, I gotta read this, man. I just popped on. I just popped on. I'm not gonna read the individual's name. This is the scenario, and I'm reading this. All right. So bear with me. It says, "How do I tell my friend I love her more than a friend?" Two females. Backstory: I met this incredible beautiful and sexy girl many years ago at a day party. She had such a beautiful energy and a sweet demeanor, we immediately hit it off. Come to find out later on, she had a boyfriend, but he was toxic, so eventually they broke up. I was proud of her. She started hanging out with me and my boyfriend more and more to the point where we were inseparable, and I loved it. One night, a thing happened. My boyfriend came home pretty drunk, and being close to my female friends is pretty normal for me. So we were sleeping in the same bed together at the fun girls' night. He got into bed with both of us, and one thing led to another. It just happened. I've never done anything like that in my life, but it was a beautiful experience and no regrets. She was everything. I love my man with all my heart, but the feeling I got with her was just different and exciting. Now we hug, I get butterflies, and when she tells me she loves me, she really has no idea how much I love her too, in every way. I want to come clean to her, but I also don't want to ruin the friendship. It's so hard seeing her with anyone else. See, this is why we talk about this particular stuff. Because just imagine if one of them would have conceived that night and that guy moves on.
Hmm.
I'm just saying, people. And I'll see if I can share that in the counselor's corner, so people who aren't catching the broadcast, who don't watch the rebroadcast, can see that and they can have their own thoughts. Because I'm not here to give anybody the thoughts. We're just here to distribute some information so people can understand how this stuff happens. You tell people, well, it was just a drunken night. It was just the three of us in bed, and one thing led to another, and it just happened. Now, shit like that just don't happen. I'm sorry. I'm I'm sorry. I'm not hanging out with Dave and my girl. That's just not gonna happen. That shit's not gonna happen.
Sometimes you just gotta have animal instincts, like yo, get the fuck away from her, like this. Don't operate like that. I don't share. I don't do all that. You ain't gonna sit around keep hugging her and all that shit in my presence or whatever. It's just real.
But see, this is what Jedi was talking about. When you have a liberal society where people are free to do things, you get stuff like this. And people talk about love triangles aren't real. Okay, well, there you go. There you go. Now you got one female walking around that's clueless. The other female knows, and who knows what she might. People, it's a crazy world we inhabit, and the only way you can keep your sanity is by understanding that damn near anything is possible. As long as you got people, the possibility exists. Now, I'm not saying there's a great possibility. It might be remote. But then again, that's what the whole freaknik thing was about. That people were afraid about being exposed. They were out here doing some things, as some freakazoid things, and uh, keep your head on the swivel. That's all I will say. Keep your head on the swivel when somebody tells you something. Yeah, don't dismiss it outright, especially if you don't have verifiable and controvertible evidence to the opposite. Just say, you know what? I'll take that under advisement. Let me go pull back the covers and see if this really passed the sniff test.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, people.
So with that said, we go get ready to get some closing comments, and it's just something for you to think about. And you might not have ever thought about it that deeply, because when you think about it, family reunion. See, a lot of people say family reunions is just a time to party with your family and all that. But sometimes you have people that put an agenda together and they want to have these conversations and discussions to figure out, like, listen, some of the old heads, they're going to pass. The torch has to be passed on to the younger generation. But how could you pass on anything to the next when you don't know shit about what went on? So you have to start having these conversations, and people that know, you'll know. Like I said, when I was doing my getting my counseling, my master's, when my grandmother, she was telling me like this person was an alcoholic. They end up having cancer. They had diabetes, and well, they would say sugar. They had sugar,
Yeah, yeah.
and and the way it was broken down, and you was just like, and then she talked about the financial aspect of it too, like when we came here, we was only making this amount, and this and that, and you just like, wow, like wow, and you don't know if you want to cry for sadness or cry for joy, like, man, like things are better. But at the same time, you have a certain respect for their travel, their journey, because they been through way more than we could ever imagine. Uh, to be split up from your siblings and all of that stuff, and still find a way to stay connected, because sometimes when that happens, people don't never find their way back. They know they got brothers and sisters and all that stuff. And you'll see, like, movies and different specials, and like, damn, I finally found my brother after 30 or 40 years. Where they they stay connected. My great grandmother, she went through a lot. She was that Medea character that Tyler talked about. She didn't play at all. But maybe her toughness and her resiliency led her children to have that same resiliency, and we are able to reciprocate off of that, and take some of that to build our resiliency, whatever, because paternity and all that stuff, DNA is a lot. I ain't saying I'm the master of knowing my history, but I'm learning, and I learned a lot over this summer, and I know the importance of it as well. So there's gonna be my closing comment. Know your personnel, know yourself, and understand that there's more than just what you've seen or
Mhm.
that you lived, that it's a whole lot of other stuff that goes into play, and you don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
but you'll be wise to listen to someone who has uh, answers, or they can fill in the blanks. Uh, and at this point, when you get a certain age, we all looking for people. We're all looking for somebody to fill in certain blanks that we don't know and understand. And there's people that still living and in your life that can fill in some of those missing blanks. So that's my
You know, th-
closing comment.
this brings up, and it's interesting actually. Years ago when I was working in a restaurant, me and a really good friend, we were working overnight, and I told him, I said, I never met my father. He said, you never were curious about who he was or what your mother saw him, et cetera, et cetera. I said, no. And there was one thing he said to me. He said, and I repeat this to people, you know, verbatim. He says, when the pain of being the great gets too same, he said, then you want to change. Now, for me, I've never reached that point where, the pain of not knowing my father physically, never having met him, spoke to him, has mattered to me regarding anything. And I'm cool with the way that worked out. Oddly enough, my father has your first name, David. So that's the irony of that.
Mm,
Now, I will say this: if you are in a similar situation to where you want to know your family lineage, heritage, when you ask those questions, do so without A, being judgmental, two, looking to blame, and three, only looking for answers that can help you explain certain things. Just like David said, one uncle you're related to could explain why you behave the way you do. An aunt could explain why you do things the way you do. This relative over here could explain why this member of the family does this. There's so many different facets to each one of us as an individual that we don't necessarily know where something comes from because we haven't explored it enough. And that's not necessarily good. It's not necessarily bad. It's just what it is. So if you're going to go on a fact finding mission, suspend the judgment, do it for reasons where you just want to know, and don't judge anybody. And that's all OG Ron has to say about that.
All right, people. As you see, we tackle a lot. We cover a lot. We do things in our fashion, in our way. Hey, find out something. Seek to get different knowledge every day. Uh, and that's always gonna make you a better person. And sometimes it has to be knowledge that no one else is seeking, and that'll make you that much better. But continue to seek out and understand because we're all complex individuals. Uh, it's hard to say. You can't, you can't never just try to figure out somebody or like, I'm trying to put my finger on this because it's so much, it's so complex. What you laughing at?
That's common.
It's one of the challenges comes in relation dealing with other people's
He said,
dysfunction.
I know it's getting cold in Buffalo. He said, is Herman Pimp now? Ah! The funny thing about that comment is, yes, it is unseasonably cold. It's actually been last week. It was down into the low 40s, which is very cold this time of year for this particular area. So when you see my doors closed like they are in this room, that means it's cold. So yes, it's cold. But tonight I don't have any heat on right now. I had it on earlier today because my house is brick. So it tends to get colder than what it is outside. In order for me to actually know how cold it is outside around this time of year, I actually have to step outside. And today it was nice enough that I went for a bike ride. I went down the falls and they redid the Robert Moses Parkway, and I rode out that way and then rode back. I was on the bike for about an hour, so I got a really really good workout in the day. Needless to say, it takes, and you know what? I never really thought I'd actually get to this point in my life, but I was tired. I get to the point now where I'm just like, you know what? I want to get off this goddamn bike and I just want to walk. I
Hmm.
just want to walk and shoot. I stopped. Matter of fact, I started here, rode down to 10th Street through the casino parking lot, um, down to the falls, around Goat Island, stopped off at Three Sisters Islands for a bit, then rode back around, came out, rode down the falls going out towards Lewiston, and they redid the Robert Moses, which I think is kind of nice because there's a lot of trails that snake in there now. They're all paved. And then I came out, went to Tops, and then I rode home. I was on the bike for just under 53 minutes. And when I got on the scale tonight, I was like, oh, that was a hell of a workout then, because I was down almost 4 pounds. I was like, oh shit. I said, all right, but I won't be doing that bike ride again anytime soon. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow in terms of exercises. Obviously, it's going to depend on how warm it is. Um, I'm always gunning for at least a pound a day weight loss. Um, I think that's a good rate for me. Um, you know, my exercise coupled with my daylight fast, and I'm watching my sugar intake. I'm trying to keep it under 100. I think it's 100 grams a day, roughly, not to exceed more than 125, 130. That's that's where I am. So that means I got to take a bacon. Me and little Debbie, we had to get a divorce. I
No,
can't hold
no,
her hand anymore.
no
I
pizza
can't.
sauce tonight.
I no, I'm not gonna be eating any pizza tonight. It's funny you say that. I had wings last night and I had a couple this morning, but I only limit that only. I limit that to 10. So yeah, no pizza tonight. Matter of fact, I was sitting up here trying to figure out what I'm gonna have, and I got some chili in the refrigerator. I might drop that in the pot, and I'm thinking, do I want a tuna melt or two tuna melts to go with that, or do I want to drop some pepperonis on a sandwich and have a quasi pizza? I'm kind of torn because the only thing I ate today was a handful of potato chips. I got a prime drink, and I'm drinking my lemon diffused water and 8 ounces chili. That's all I've had to eat today.
Mm.
So I'm 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 in I'm in the point where I can eat today, and I don't and I want people to understand I don't restrict myself when it comes to what I eat. I just don't eat during daylight hours. So if I want to order a pizza and wings, I can do that. I'm just not gonna eat that all in one sitting anymore. I'm gonna divide that up. That might last 2 or 3 days. But what I did do was I went to the local grocery store, which you call Tops. Don't know what it is where other people live at. And I cut the pizza in half, put half in the refrigerator. It was cheese. I think 4 cheese Tonys. Dropped my turkey pepperoni on there, popped it in the oven, and that was it. So now I'm more so in the portion control as opposed to not eating. Just like Jedi said, you only live once, so enjoy yourself. And there are some things that I just don't eat anyway. So when it comes to certain foods and I'm out and about, I don't eat them. So people talk about Burger King, McDonald's. I rarely go to Burger King because the only thing they have at Burger King that I eat is a chicken sandwich and it's fried. I wish they'd never stop making the grilled chicken, but that's what they did. Same thing when I go to Burger King. Sorry, McDonald's. The only thing I eat at McDonald's is the chicken McNuggets and the fillet of fish. All of the rest of the stuff I don't touch. So, but yeah, I will definitely keep you guys posted on the weight loss. Like I said, 210 pounds is the goal, and I'm gonna get there by hook or crook.
All right, good people. So we out. On to the next one. Stay tuned for the clips of this show and other interesting conversations that happen in the counselor's corner. And make sure you tell a friend, tell a cousin, tell a coworker to please subscribe to the controversial counselor YouTube channel. Been stuck at 919. I should start playing that damn number. I might I might win. Hit something big and say, screw this channel. But no, that's just a three-way number, so I don't think you can win all like that. I'm not even into the numbers like that, um, but we've been at 919 for a minute. It kind of fluctuates, whatever, but the struggle is real. The grind
Yeah,
is real. You just stay at it. You just stay the course. You keep knocking at the door. Somebody gonna answer.
yeah.
So that's how I figure. So we all good. So thanks to everybody who came in, who tuned in. Make sure you share it, like it, hit the bell icon to get notified, and we out on to the next one.
All right, people.
Thanks, family, for saying good show tonight.
Yep.
I said that. My cousin Shank, appreciate your support. And again, we on and we out to the next
All right,
one.
people.
See
Y'all
you
take
next
care.
time. All right, peace.